Welcome to our podcast from the ground up, where we interview startup founders exploring their journeys, their successes, challenges, and lessons learned. We hope you be inspired in discovering what it takes to build a thriving startup. I'm your host, Jake Aaron Villarreal, and excited to have with us today Christian Byza, the founder of Learn.xyz that recently raised $3 million in seed funding. Christian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Awesome.
Great. So a little bit about Christian. He's a CEO and co-founder of Learn.xyz, where AI creates addictive learning experiences on any topic in any language. Think Duolingo and Wikipedia meet generative AI. Christian spent the last 10 years at LinkedIn and Adobe before starting Learn.xyz with his best friend last year. They're located in San Francisco and today have a team of 7. So Christian, before we dive in here, talk to us about the journey you took from Germany to Silicon Valley and what led you to come here.
Yeah, sure. I mean, actually, before I do that, just so for the people that stop right after this, because I hear my language or my talking, my accent, it's Learn.xyz, not learning. So just for the record that people know out there what our product is. But yeah, how did I get here? I always like to tell the story of me being a teacher kid. My parents were teachers, my grandparents were teachers. And so something with education was always close at heart. And so the first company that I actually started with a few other people and friends in Germany, like 13 years ago, was an education business as well. So we taught people about online marketing, and that grew into the largest conference in the world in the space. It's called OMR. So for people that are from Germany that knows this probably really well, because it's today a big media company that does lots of things around the learning space. But for me, this was always kind of a side project. I always loved to work in tech, but then I had this passion also for education and events. And so this was kind of combined. And I worked for a startup in Germany that got acquired by Adobe. And then after the acquisition, they offered me to say, hey, do you want to join the headquarters? Do you want to move to San Francisco? And, many people that are excited about tech, that sounded almost too good to be true. And so my wife, or back then girlfriend, then wife, and I decided to move to San Francisco 10 years ago. And that's how we got here. I got my green card, then switched to LinkedIn, and then eventually decided to really do something by myself. But that's essentially the story of how we moved here and why I'm in San Francisco and not in Germany.
LinkedIn is a company that's well known. Most employees are on the platform. When you went to LinkedIn, what did you do when you got there, and what made you want to join LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's funny. So actually, when they messaged me first, so they messaged me on LinkedIn, like most recruiters do, right? My initial instinct was that I don't want to work there because UX and amazing product is something that is really close to heart for me. And I never considered LinkedIn as a place, back then at least, where really good product is actually there, which is funny because it's a product-led company and it's a lot of design that they put into the product now. But back then, if you Google how LinkedIn used to look like, it was a really ugly thing. And so in the interview process, they actually showed me vision mock-ups of where the product is going. And that actually was one of the main reasons why I said, okay, I see this big UX influence, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to get there. And the other one was the topic that they hired me for. So they wanted to win the German market over. And for most people, that's probably not very obvious, but 6-7 years ago or 8 years ago, LinkedIn wasn't the social or professional social network of choice in that market. There was a local competitor that was leading by miles. And the job was essentially to change that. And I'm a very competitive person. And so I really like this opportunity to take over a market that is somewhat close to heart. And I always believed into an open, big social network effect. And so I was always confused why there is a social network that would only focus on one country, which doesn't make any sense, especially these days where it's all about global markets, and you want to not only engage with people of your own, your own heritage, but with kind of everyone. And so that's what we did. We basically built a team to change a lot of things for that German market. We did this for other markets as well later, for India and China and Japan. And that was a really cool journey. And then down the line, I did other things at LinkedIn as well. But the first few years were focused on that. And that opportunity was just really, really interesting. And so that's when and why I joined.
And were you specifically on the go-to-market team, or what was your...
No, product. In product management. So I've been a product manager pretty much all my life. I wasn't aware that job title existed, but since high school, I was the product person. So they essentially assembled these teams, 10 engineers, a product person, a designer. And as I mentioned, LinkedIn is a product-led company. And so you're kind of the owner of that country from a product perspective. And then we would work with go-to-market teams, marketing. There was country management from a sales perspective in the market. But, just like fun anecdotes, like Germans love birthdays, for example. And I had to convince the people here in the US that this is so important. And then we collected everyone's birthday in Germany, and that made sessions go like crazy because people suddenly had a daily use case to come to LinkedIn. Because in the professional context, birthdays are equally important as they are for, your mom and dad and aunt and uncle. And so those are the features that we did. We did like stuff around premium and birthdays, and we fixed a lot of standardization problems, right? There's a different education system in Germany, like a dual education system that wasn't covered by the product because it was just focused. Or actually my other favorite feature was that we supported umlaut search, the A, U and O with the 2 dots on top. 12% of Germans have an umlaut in their last name. And so our search just wouldn't support like finding like Müller. Müller is like the most common name in Germany. And so if your name was Christian Müller, for example, you couldn't find yourself. And so people are like, what is this for a platform? I can't even find myself. One of the biggest wins actually of like that work that we fixed that. And so those are the things that we did. Just lots of like focus on detail to fix the product for that specific market.
I know a lot of leaders in startups and innovators, they have a product mindset. They can see an opportunity and they can build products around that to solve problems. It's key, really, I think, for leadership in a lot of startups. Talk to us about your company today that you launched, Learn.xyz. When you say Duolingo and Wikipedia, those are 2 platforms that I use, and that gets my attention. What is it that you're doing in that space, and walk us through the problem you're looking to solve?
Yeah, look, it's funny here. We had a little bit of a journey that we didn't start with this, right? Like most startups, they have an idea, they start tinkering around, and then eventually some other opportunity arises. And to answer your question, I have to first explain how we got there. But what I saw when I was working at LinkedIn, that everyone was talking about Web3 and crypto stuff, but no one really understood what they were talking about. And so since I had built a learning product for online marketing, so I was teaching people about digital marketing in the past, people actually came to me and said, hey, Christian, you know how to explain things. Why don't you explain crypto and Web3 to us and build a product? And so this is what we actually initially started. We started to build a learning platform just specifically for that vertical learning space for crypto and Web3. And then obviously this market wasn't as mainstream as we thought when we initially started this almost 2 years ago. We were successful and raised a little pre-seed round. We raised $1 million last January, so like almost 2 years ago now. And we started to build this product, and then all those things in crypto happened, right? Like all the scam and the fraud, and also we didn't really like the users that we were building for because they didn't really come to learn. They came mostly to get free crypto, and so that mindset didn't match with what we wanted to do. But then there were some users that actually really liked the product, and they were also nice, and they said, "Hey, can we also learn other things?" And so we started to create courses on just random things that were out there. Like when ChatGPT launched, we created a course on what is ChatGPT, what is a large language model, what is quantum computing, what are whatever question comes to mind, we basically wrote a course manually with our hands. We had a content writer, a designer that did all the UX design, the slides, and it was costing us probably like $1,000 per course. And we were putting about 2 courses out a week. And that's where the problem basically started, where we're like, how do we scale this, right? And how can we bring more content out? And we thought, what if we can create 10 courses a week? And we started to build this tool, which is today the product, but like this tool to create content for us with AI. And we launched the first version of the tool as basically our first prototype to the team. And we typed in Chinese New Year, this year in January, so like 10 months ago. And the course that came out was just so good that we were like, holy shit, but this is not a tool. This is the product. And so at that moment, we realized we don't have to have a content writer anymore. Our content writer is the AI. So what if we package this up into something that you can, learn about pretty much everything you want with the power of AI? And then we started to bring this into a version that actually users can use it. And in April, we launched the first kind of closed beta, like a couple of thousand people in it, like 10,000 users. And they created within 3 months more than 60,000 of these little curiosities, how we call them. So we don't say we are a learning platform, because it's not about upskilling you or teaching you how to use Photoshop, those kind of things like what Udemy and these like learning platforms do. It's really about casual education, like general knowledge about whatever happens in the world out there. Like as bad as obviously the things are that are happening right now in Israel and Gaza, for example, there are a lot of things that people are curious about. What is actually kibbutz, or what is the Gaza Strip, or what is the West Bank? Those are terms that were like really trending in our product because people want to get those insights and want to have them explained. And then we package this up in a way that it is actually fun. We almost talk about a positive addiction to the product, where we, rather than going to Instagram or TikTok and just waste your time and you just doom scroll, you open Learn.xyz every day and then spend your time in a better way. And you really feel good about that time that you spend. And that's basically our goal. We say it always, we are in the business of making you feel good about the time that you spend.
I can tell you that from firsthand experience, I've got family members that spend a lot of time on their mobile apps and games, and, hours go by and there's this guilt that they start to feel.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, I have this guilt still a couple of times a week, right? Just, yesterday evening, I really wanted to go to bed, but then I got trapped into this YouTube Shorts kind of trap. And like half an hour later, I was like, oh, damn it, this is like another half an hour of sleep that I lost. And that's what we try to do, right? And I'm very much aware that we are not taking everyone away immediately, but at least there is an alternative. And there are millions of users out there that do feel this guilt, and they're searching for alternatives. And those are the people that learn languages on Duolingo, as you mentioned, right? Like people that spend time on Wikipedia, maybe Reddit, that want to use their time in a better way. And for them, we want to have almost like a learning game, like a social experience. And then you like connect with your friends, you see what they are learning, you get inspired. We put stuff into our social feed that inspires you to learn new things every day.
How do you see this as kind of going forward from curiosities that we have as individuals, transitioning to potential businesses or the corporate market? Because I personally believe that learning and development is in a lot of ways broken within companies. It's boring, it's monotonous. You have to sit down, do these online trainings or in person, and it may help you, it may not, but ultimately there's a lot of funds being spent yearly on trying to educate and train people within companies. In what way do you see your platform being able to position in that space, or is that on the roadmap? What are your thoughts there?
It's funny that you touch on this, because you're basically talking about our business plan here. So this is one of those things that were not clear for us initially when we started, because we were thinking about this consumer pain point of spending your time in a better way. And then we launched this early prototype, and companies came to us and said literally what you just mentioned, right? Like corporate learning is boring. It's like bad content. It's old. It's not personalized. And we took a lot of these calls with companies. We talked to like one big army, like a Western army, like a Navy. They have like 10,000 soldiers. So I won't disclose which country, but talk to them. We talked to one of the biggest tech consulting firms in the world. They have 400,000 employees. We talked to some yeast manufacturer, like all kinds of random companies that came to us, one university, and they all came with the same issue. They said, hey, we have all this content here. Can you create courses or curiosities out of this content in your style? So it's fun, it's gamified, it's kind of short-lived, it's, engaging, almost addictive, rather than me sitting in front of my computer doing 3 other things and then also completing this learning path on my second monitor, right? Like that's what's happening with most cybersecurity, social harassment, corporate social responsibility, those kind of topics that you have to do. And I used to work at LinkedIn where I had to do these courses, right? Like they are just so dry. And that's like why we think we were also able to build or raise money, because we want to build not just like a social network here, but we want to attack this corporate learning market. And it's to say there's lots of budget that goes towards this. And the beauty is that we have such a better unit economic behind the scenes, right? Because we don't have a human that needs to write all of this content. We have AI that helps. And so we can create courses at a much lower rate compared to what you would pay otherwise. And I think I mentioned the $1,000 before, right? Like that you spend $1,000 per course, or we used to. Now, when you create a course or a curiosity on our platform, it costs us somewhere between 3 and 5 cents.
Wow.
And if you think this for, companies, They either have their content that they can ingest into we have like this desktop experience that we are building now, where you upload your PDF document or you have a YouTube video or whatever it is. And then we use our models in our data pipeline to then create like these curiosities from that specific content. And then these employers can push this to their employee base. And this is something that we are working on right now, which we will get to eventually. But yeah, really, really excited that that opportunity exists, so that we don't have to sell ads, for example. We have this manifest in the company that we don't want to sell ads in our product, because ads lead, in my eyes, to really bad product decisions. Because then the ad is always the important thing, like that the click. I remember this from the LinkedIn days, right? Like the ads in the feed, they're so holy. And if you build anything into the screen and distract from the ad, less people click on the ad and you make less money. And so you're not innovating. And so that's why we have this manifest where we say we never want to have ads in our product.
I love that. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of ads. I know they have their place, but
I like to buy ads to get new users, but I just don't want to have ads in my product.
Yeah, I get you. When it comes to the courses, you're talking about maybe creating content that's something you can learn from. How long does it take? Say I'm a company, or say I'm a person. I'm curious about, a topic that's in the news today, and I want to learn more about it. What do I do in your app, and how long does it take to create this quiz or this game or this learning?
Yeah. So most of the times, probably someone did this already. So when you type something in the type ad, it shows up. I mean, we launched this app now 2.5, 3 weeks ago, and we are at, actually, I don't have that number in my head right now. I only have the download number, but it's like tens of thousands of courses that are in there. And I think we probably like 70 or 80,000 of these little curiosities.
Amazing.
And so because every content exists already, we categorize the content over 1,081 categories by AI. So AI actually, it's like a Google model that can categorize content into categories. And so either it's instant, right? You want to learn about, I don't know, like Big Bang Theory or something, or what is a black hole? Or if you would type in any dinosaur name, probably someone did this with their children already. So you can do that. Or you create a new curiosity, and then it takes somewhere between 30 and 60 seconds. And then you have your personalized course on that topic that you desire to learn about.
And how long are these courses? Like I think of school of, this is a 6-month course, or this is a 90-day course. Are they little snippets where you kind of go through it in 10 minutes or?
Yeah, that's actually more, and that's why we started talking about courses here, and I try to actually not use that word, because course or lesson sounds like work, right? Like learning inherently is kind of is work, and it seems for most people at least something that they don't want to do. And so that's why we try to mint this term curiosity in the product. So you create curiosity, and it's the product for the curious. And who doesn't want to say I'm curious, right? It's like a very positive word and trait. Actually, I love this word, even though I have still issues pronouncing it as a German. Like every time I say the word, I was like, curiosity. I need to concentrate. Anyways, so the time it takes you to take one is like less than 5 minutes. But then AI recommends more things to do afterwards, and you can get into this rabbit hole. So let's say you learn about some French king, then it may recommend like some French castle, and then it like suddenly talks about cheese and then French cuisine, and then you're in Bordeaux and learn about wine. And you kind of go down this rabbit hole because AI continues to recommend other things to you to learn. And we try to push in existing courses that we already have from the database into these recommendations. You can just click and go and go and go and go. And we see people taking very long rabbit holes and paths in the product.
I want to go back a little bit about the company itself. You launched this with your best friend. You went out and raised capital in a really tough time to raise money. What were some of the lessons you learned? How many times did you pitch? What did it take to close the deal?
Yeah, it's kind of hopefully my lead investor doesn't hear this podcast, but I'm brutally honest here. So I think we talked to actually I know the number, but it's like, it's close to 350 people I talked to in total as part of this round. And I remember when we talked to them initially, there was this kind of conversation was like, most startups that raise money, they have like a couple of cores. And then there was a statement of like, I don't understand why someone would need to talk to like 100 VCs to get money. And I was like, in my head, I was like, I'm in like call number 237. I can't tell right now. Look, I mean, I never raised money really before this. There was this little pre-seed round in the height of the crypto market. We had a pitch date, and afterwards we took like 10 calls and we did $1 million, what we wanted. And so we were like, oh, that's easy. But that wasn't really raising money back then, like a year ago or 1.5 years ago. This time, I had kind of this structured process of, I want this amount and who should I talk to? And I think I talked to also many people that were just not the right fit from the get-go. But if you come and you have somewhat of a good track record of what your history is, where you worked, almost every VC probably takes your call. If you know how to get the right person on the phone. And I think that's the first step I can probably like talk into for advice. So I heavily use LinkedIn. I would like identify VCs, like partners in the firm, and then would check who I have in common. And usually you always have a couple of, I mean, at least when you are connected in the ecosystem, and I have like a lot of connections on LinkedIn, then you know always a couple of people that you have in common. And so I would reach out to these people in common and say, hey, I really want to talk to VC so-and-so, name so-and-so. Do you mind making me, or how well do you know this person? And then they respond. And then I say, would you mind on Tuesday making me an intro? And so I would line up 3, 5, 10 intros on the same day, depending on how important that investor is. And then that investor would get tackled with basically 10 emails that day that say, you really should talk to Christian. And every single investor that was on this trap basically like immediately thought, oh my God, like I get 10 emails in one day to talk to this person. I should probably like better talk to this person. I probably made some people also upset. I'm sorry about this. But in the end, my goal is to talk to some person, and I better do everything I can, and I hustle until I have this conversation with this partner. And so that's one thing that I did. The other one, of course, is, do you have a product and traction, right? And we launched this thing in this prototype version. It was a closed beta, but tens of thousands of these curiosities were created like, every week, and people just like this. They use the product, they see the traction, and so you have people that then say, okay, I want to support this. And then the last one is probably also that you have a lot of relationship that you build, right? You build equity with people over time. And when you can show, and for me, I was part of this big conference that we grew to like a 400 people company. We bootstrapped that. And I worked at LinkedIn, which is obviously a very high regarded company when it comes to product in particular. And so I had that, and my co-founder has an equally amazing resume. And so we had this combination of the right team, probably the right time, right? Like we had this whole Gen AI kind of trend, and then the traction, and of course hustle to really get there. And we work out of this kind of co-working space here in the Mission in San Francisco, actually next to OpenAI, which is always funny because they're just next door. and I see how other founders engage with VCs, right? Like I really enjoy telling the story and pitching. I mean, as much as I enjoy talking to you, it's almost like a VC conversation in a way, right? Like they ask actually very similar questions. And I really enjoy this process of convincing other people. And then sometimes you win, most of the times, of course, you lose. But I really enjoy this process. And I see the 25 other companies here that kind of give up very quickly, right? Like they pitch for 2 weeks, they don't get a check. I think it took us like probably 3-4 weeks until we found the first larger check. And then there's also this trickle effect, right? Like once you have your lead investor and someone that puts like more than $1 million in, then you have other investors that are more likely to give you money because someone else did the due diligence already. I would always want to work for, if I ever become a VC, I would want to work for a company where you have that, like that decision power to go in as a first person rather than just follow along. It's safer probably to follow along, but those are maybe some of the points of why we were able to close this round. But yeah, it's been definitely a tough few months to get to this point, and it makes us really proud that we were able to do it.
Yeah. They say proximity really helps when you're building a startup. Silicon Valley, Seattle, some of the bigger tech areas, Austin, Colorado, different parts of New York. Being so close to OpenAI, what's that like for those that aren't in San Francisco? And, we read so much about ChatGPT and AI in general, and to be that close in proximity Do you guys ever sit down and grab lunches? Do you kind of know them? Or
Yeah, we sometimes do. I mean, we have like an account partner there. There's someone from the go-to-market team. I mean, everyone I know from OpenAI is like smart, like the smartest people they gathered is unbelievable, actually. And their offices are beautiful. We've only been there once. They always usually come to us. Yesterday, there was just someone over for lunch again. I mean, how is it? I mean, actually, I didn't know that they were there until probably maybe 6 months ago. At the beginning of the year, like in March, I realized that they are next door because there is no sign. There is not like Google or Facebook or something where there's like huge signs in front of the buildings and people drive there and do a selfie. As a matter of fact, even when you go into the lobby, there is no OpenAI sign. When you go into the lobby, the only logo you see is on the badge that you get when you check in. You get these little paper badges and it says OpenAI, but there's nothing. And it even became a little bit more strange because now they have these cowboy security guards standing in front of their office. So all day, everywhere in front of so people can't see us, right? Like, but just to imagine this, like we are talking to each other here and behind me is a glass wall and behind that is a window and behind that is a street. And on the other side of the street is OpenAI. So I'm standing like 30 feet away from maybe, Sam Altman's office. I don't know actually where he's located, but it could be. And so, it's just a little bit awkward that these people now stand there all the time. But we see Sam actually walking across the street sometimes because they have a second office just down the road. And so they walk back and forth. But then now I read the news last weekend that they just signed a new lease in Mission Bay, different part of San Francisco. And they will move there. And it's a former Uber office building.
Oh wow!
So they want to actually triple their size again, and it's crazy because the office that they just moved into here in the Mission in San Francisco, I think they invested like something like north of $2 million or something. I forgot what the exact number was, but I read about it. You can Google it. But they invested millions of dollars into their office build out, and now again they're growing. They are growing so quickly that they need yet another business office, and apparently they can triple their workforce there. So wow. I always say, like, if I didn't do my own startup, that is the company that everyone should like think about working, because it's probably, will be one of the most important and biggest companies in the world. I mean, even now is, right, with the visibility that they have, but it's pretty remarkable.
Well, AI sounds like is very embedded into your platform, and you're at today about, 7 employees, 8, something like that?
Yeah, 7.
When you got your idea and then you went to market and started to hire people, how did you get people to join the company early stage, maybe before you had funding? Was it your own network? Did you go out in the market? How did you build?
It's hard. Who wants to join a scrappy startup that has no traction yet or no product even, right? And so every start is hard. We did a few things. So we organized events very early on. We have this beautiful office with an outdoor space, and so we started to like host people and got people excited that way. We hired people often on a contract first. So our first hire, for example, Carmen, she's our designer, the one who's responsible for all the beautiful UX that we have. So we just hired her as a contractor because she came through a recommendation, and then she just really liked the work relationship on a contract base. And then that's kind of how we got to know each other. And then that's how we hired her full time eventually. We hosted these events. Like one big thing that we did, for example, was a hackathon right after ChatGPT 3.5 was released. And there were like 250 engineers or so here in our office. We have this massive office from our investor, right? It's like 30,000 square feet. So we have the ability to host massive events. And because we were the host, people knew us, and so people were like, "What are you guys doing?" And then we were able to hire one engineer there. Then we organized a talent fair. We basically came up with this claim, like, become employee number 1 in San Francisco's next unicorn. We gathered basically all startups that we knew that were hiring here in our office. We had like, I think 20 startups. Everyone had a booth, like really high quality booth, really nice. And then we basically blasted it out there, right? Like every founder was basically talking about this event. And so 700 people signed up and came by in person. And so we hired another 2 people from that event. And so like step by step you do this, and then there are these serendipities and talking about the right thing at the right moment. Like unfortunately at LinkedIn, there was a big layoff. You may have seen this in the news. And so like 2 days ago, I think this was announced, and I just made a post on LinkedIn and said, hey, I'm so sorry for your loss, all my colleagues, or not your loss, but like that you lost your job. But we are hiring across AI, machine learning, engineering. If you know anyone, please let us know. And then that post, I mean, at least for me, I'm not like the most viral person on LinkedIn, but I got like 90,000 views on this post and like 6 likes. And just because at the right moment, I talked about something that was really close to heart to a lot of people. And so a lot of LinkedIn employees would comment for reach and would reshare. And those are the things that you just do. And then I think how we convince people is also how our job listings look like. Like we don't have like a boring job listing that just, is copied and pasted or created by ChatGPT. Take a lot of effort in making the job listing really stand out. If you go to careers.learn.xyz, you see this, like we have a lot of pictures of the team. So you see the culture and you kind of get to know us before you even speak to us. We're very transparent about the process and like how we like to do things and how we bring you on site and what kind of exercise you get home. And so we just take a lot of pride in like making this maybe a little bit different and more creative than other people.
Yeah, I think you have to work a little bit differently when you're building from the ground up. And It sounds like you're doing all of the things that are creative that we don't often hear about that companies go down. And I think that's really cool that you're sharing that so others can learn. And, we work with 100,000 engineers a year. And, what we've seen in the market is, on the downturns, there's been companies that have had layoffs and they don't backfill. They've kind of been slow to do that, but they have brought people back in as contractors. And then you eventually get back to where you're hiring again and growing. And so I think that's a good approach. During COVID, we had to pivot a little bit too. And we ended up building a different model, which was really for contractors to join startups. And it really was helpful for the startups that were looking to kind of conserve their cash, at the same time, see the talent first. And it's been really helpful, not just in the US, but internationally, South America, Brazil, Argentina, different places. It's made it really fun to kind of make companies that were really US based only international and kind of see that diversity grow within, their culture. As you look at your platform and your product going forward, I know you're a little bit younger in the process of building your company, but really in a good position. Where do you see things going from here? What's kind of on the near term roadmap as you kind of get into the market more?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are a few things. Obviously, we want to grow the user base, but how do you grow the user base? We always have like, how do we get to 1 million users now from like the 10,000 that we have now? And there's lots of features that go in hand with this, right? Like, how do you make it more engaging? How do you build growth into the product so people invite others and get some incentives for that? And there's just a long roadmap of things that we test, a lot of things that we show to users right now. I mean, for us, the first step was just to get the product out so that people can actually experience it. And now we're doing a lot of research. So we're building a lot of prototypes, and we have a very engaged audience of our users that really like the product. And so we have this ability to just write emails to them and say, hey, do you want to have a call? And we easily can get like 10, 20 calls on any topic that we want. And then we test it with them and see what sticks. And then we build it, we ship it very fast. Right? As a startup, you can move very quickly. And within like 1 or 2 weeks, you push out new, very big features into the product. And so that's what we essentially do. And on my end, it's sort of marketing and PR and finding ways. That's why we have a conversation also today, because I like to just tell the story, and maybe we get a couple of signups through this conversation, and that leads again to other people talking about this product, and just go from there and see what sticks.
You talked a little bit in the beginning of this conversation about digital marketing and being really in that field, in that area. How has digital marketing changed today? And what are the things that you feel are like maybe the top 2 or 3 things that other companies that are building platforms should be doing or thinking about?
I mean, how did it change? So it's funny, I didn't actually create Google AdWords campaigns, for example, in probably almost 10 years now, because I just didn't have to anymore after I moved to the US. And the limitations in tracking, for example, what you can really optimize to, like what kind of email lists you were able to upload in the past and do all of these kind of almost fishy things in digital marketing. I'm very glad that all of these are not allowed anymore, right? Like GDPR and these other European laws for data protection are really good that they are there, because people were not doing the right things. But it's become much harder to now understand, actually, like when you acquire traffic, how like how does it perform, where does it come from? Because Apple in particular really limits the ability to personally connect and add with the person, which was possible before. So what can other people do? I mean, in the end, you need to have a really good tracking stack, right? Like in your product, where you can really understand what kind of paths people do, and so you can understand what drop-offs are happening within the product. But I don't know if I can give you a way more specific answer there on what else changed. I mean, the other thing actually that comes to mind is, the variety of opportunities that you have, and like where do you focus your time, right? You can do these TikTok videos, and that's really challenging to grow as a brand. You can spend ads on so many different formats, on newsletter ads and YouTube influencers and whatever it is, right? Like you just have to try and find that path that works for you and your specific need. And we are also still on the hunt, right? Like we are trying a lot of different things out. And one video we posted with this influencer together last week got like 300,000 plays on Instagram. So there are some things that work, but then you do something similar the next day and it doesn't work at all. So it's like super not predictable, right?
Yeah. As the leader of the company, I think business is not just a psychological game, but it's also some spirituality to it too. As a leader, how do you stay positive? You have good energy. I'm sure that translates to your employees, but what are some of the things that you use to keep yourself up when it comes to tough times, or keep the morale up with you and your team?
I love that you asked this, because it's one of my things actually I like to talk about, and I tell other people my strategy. And you're right. I have ING. I'm very blessed that I'm always in a good mood. Yeah. I never have a bad mood for some reason. So I'm really grateful and happy about this. So thank you, my parents. Whatever you did with your genetics, you did it right. But one thing that I really learned actually at LinkedIn when we got acquired by Microsoft was from Satya Nadella. And Satya once said in some interview, I read somewhere publicly, right? Like I had one meeting with him once, but
nice.
He said no bad days. And ever since he said there's no bad days, I reflected on this. And so how he explains this is like, I don't know if you know, but like he had a son that was like very ill from birth, and he was supposed to be, I think, only like 2 or 3 years old or something, and then he made it. I think like he passed away like last year, so he became like 16 or 18 or something. And so Satya told the story of how everything in business really doesn't matter. What matters is that you are healthy, your family's healthy, you have a happy relationship and friends, and so anything in work kind of should come second. And that also means that no matter how big the conflict is, especially as a CTO or as a CEO, you have this funnel of like shit actually that comes to you, because you are the problem solver essentially. And so you see a lot of the issues because that's your job to fix these problems. But none of these really matter compared to your family and your happiness and your life and your health. And so that's why he said, I don't come to work ever with a bad mood. And that's why for me, it's like no bad days. My co-founder actually heavily disagrees on this, more the kind of the grumpy German. But I 100% lived after this. And I lived after this even before I knew and could articulate it so well as Satya did. But ever since, I run around and tell people no bad days. I should actually create t-shirts, because like when you ask people, it's like, what do you think when you think about Christian? And they always say, oh, he always talks about no bad days. But it's just so true, right? Like if you're a leader and you come to work and you may have a fight with your partner at home or your kids, like, I mean, my kids are small. I have 2 kids, 1 and 5, and sometimes they don't sleep at night. And so I come to the office tired. But if I come to the office tired, my team may think, oh, did we lose a partner? Like investor didn't wire the money? Like what's going on? People kind of project all kinds of things into how what they see in your leader. But if you constantly have this like smile in your face and you're always in a good mood, and again, right, like other people may completely disagree, and I totally respect this, but like for me, this really works. Like this is how I kind of excite people to what we work on. This is how I bring other people along. And some people may say, oh, I cannot I work with this person who's always in a good mood, but that's just me. And I emphasize and double down on this even more. And ever since I heard this talk from Satya Nadella, I'm even more happy about it, because really no bad days is the thing to live after in my eyes.
Well, I love that. And I really believe that energy from the leader kind of trickles down and impacts everyone. There's no better way to end on a note like that. So I want to thank you so much, Christian, for joining today. If someone wants to hear more about you or about your company, Learn.xyz, where do they find you? Where do they find the company?
Yeah, you can just go to any app store, Apple or Google, and download the app. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Write a message to it, because I don't connect with people that don't at least say what they want. So thank you so much for having me, Jake.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining, and thanks so much for the listeners that have listened. It means the world to us that you spent your time with us today. I look forward to catching up with you on the next episode. I'm Jake Aaron Villarreal, and excited to move forward into the weekend. Have a great day. Thanks a lot, Christian.
Bye. Thank you.
Before we wrap up, I want to give a big shout out to all the entrepreneurs that have joined to make this podcast possible. And for all the listeners for listening. It means the world to me that you chose to spend your time with us today. I'm your host, Jake Aaron Villarreal, signing off for now, but can't wait to connect with you all soon on the next episode. Take care. This show is sponsored by Match Relevant, a company that helps venture-backed startups find the best people in the market, and they do it in 3 simple steps. First, they sit down with founders to understand their story. Second, they tell their story into multiple candidate channels. And third, they schedule interviews within 48 hours. Find us at matchrelevant.com to learn more about how we do it.